When my own son told me I wasn't welcome in his house for Christmas, I smiled and made a single phone call that would change everything. By New Year's, his mortgage was canceled, his arrogance was about to meet reality, and justice was on its way. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Your support keeps these stories alive. I leaned back into Michael's leather couch, the same one I had helped him buy after his wife, Isabella, complained. Their old furniture wasn't sophisticated enough. I tried to lighten the moment. I could make my famous turkey this year, I said gently. The one your mother loved. Remember how she always said it was better than her grandmother's? But instead of smiling, Michael's posture stiffened. His wedding ring caught the twinkle of the 12-foot Christmas tree, standing proudly in the corner. He looked down at the marble coffee table I had paid for, and whispered words that felt like a knife in my chest. Dad, you won't be welcome here for Christmas. I blinked. Surely I had misheard. What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome? Michael couldn't meet my eyes. Robert, Isabella's parents are coming. They'd prefer if you weren't here. It's just easier this way. Easier. That word rattled in my skull. I looked around the room. The silk curtains I'd paid for when Isabella complained about privacy. The hardwood floors bought with money from my second mortgage. The crown molding that had maxed out my credit card. Every inch of this house was built on my sacrifices. And what way is that, Michael? I asked slowly. He flinched, shoulders curling inward. Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Through the kitchen archway, I saw Isabella's $2,000 KitchenAid mixer sitting proudly on the counter, something she had used only twice since October. Another reminder of where my money had gone. My voice was quieter than I intended. Where will I spend Christmas then? Michael's face crumbled. Maybe you could visit Aunt Rosa, or we could do something the weekend after. The weekend after, as if Christmas with me was just another errand, another appointment to be rescheduled. I stood, my knees aching under the weight of years of hard work, and made my way to the door. My son called after me, Dad, wait, but I was already gone. And as I stepped into the cold December night, one thought burned hotter than the sting of betrayal. He had no idea whose name still stood on the deed to that house. The father leaves his son's home, broken but not defeated, silently carrying a plan that will turn Michael's arrogance upside down. The night air stung as I walked down the driveway. Christmas lights blinked cheerfully on the gutters of the house I had paid for, mocking me with their artificial warmth. My breath fogged in the cold, and with each step, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Michael thought he had banished me, but what he didn't realize was that the very foundation of his perfect life was still resting on my shoulders, and all it would take was one phone call to shift the ground beneath him. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, the smell of black coffee filling my small apartment. I opened the drawer where I kept my files, neatly stacked bank statements, mortgage contracts, receipts for every payment I had ever made on that house. My fingers traced the bold letters on the original deed. Owner, Jonathan Reyes. My name, not his. Michael and Isabella thought they owned their dream home. They thought I was just a tired old man, grateful for a spare guest room on holidays. They had no idea that I had kept the deed in my name all these years, telling myself it was just paperwork that needed finishing. The truth was, some instinct deep down had whispered not to sign it over. Maybe it was my wife's voice, long gone but still present in my conscience. Be careful, Jonathan. People change when money is involved. That afternoon, I made the call. Lun. Yes, I'd like to cancel the automatic mortgage payments for the property on Brookside Lane, I told the woman on the other end. My voice was steady, my resolve sharp. She hesitated. Sir, are you sure? These payments have been consistent for years, I'm sure. When I hung up, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, I felt in control again. Michael had cast me aside like yesterday's news, but soon he would discover just how quickly his world could crumble. Days turned into weeks. I heard nothing from Michael. No phone calls, no texts. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone, heating up a frozen turkey dinner, watching the snow pile up against the window. Loneliness hurt, yes, but beneath it, simmered a strange anticipation. Then, in early January, it happened. Michael showed up at my door, his face pale, his voice tight with panic. "Dad, we got a notice from the bank. They're saying the mortgage is overdue. But that's impossible. You said everything was taken care of." I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the moment. "Did you read the deed, Michael?" His eyes flickered with confusion. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Everything," I said quietly, "because the house isn't in your name. It never was." His jaw dropped. His hands trembled. For once, my son, the same boy who had looked at me with cold dismissal weeks ago, was utterly speechless. And in that silence I knew the real lesson was just beginning. Michael realizes the house he thought was his is still under his father's name, and the overdue mortgage payments are only the beginning of his unraveling. Michael stood in my doorway, pale as the winter sky behind him. His polished shoes, his tailored coat, they suddenly looked ridiculous against the desperation in his eyes. "Dad, you can't be serious," he stammered. "The house is in your name? That doesn't make sense. Isabel and we've lived there for years." I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly in front of me. "And who made that possible, Michael? Who took out a second mortgage at 60 years old? Who maxed out his credit cards so you could have silk curtains and hardwood floors?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "But you said you'd transfer everything over." I corrected, that when the time was right, we would make things official. But the time never felt right. Something told me to wait, and now I see why. His voice cracked. "Dad, please. Isabella doesn't know. She'll lose it." The mention of her name made me tighten my jaw. Isabella, always demanding, always smirking, like she had married up by joining our family. She had pushed Michael into this arrogance, feeding his pride until it swallowed his gratitude whole. I rose from my chair, moving slowly toward the window. Snow was falling in heavy flakes outside, covering the ground in white. "I gave you a home, Michael, a foundation, and when Christmas came, you cast me aside like an embarrassment. Now tell me, why should I protect you from the consequences?" His lips trembled, but no words came. For the first time since he was a child, my son looked utterly lost. 2 days later, Isabella came storming into my apartment. Her designer coat trailed snow onto my rug, her perfume overpowering. She didn't even bother with greetings. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, slamming a bank notice on my table. "Foreclosure threats. Are you trying to ruin us?" I didn't flinch. "It seems you've mistaken who owns that house." Her eyes narrowed, venom glinting behind her false lashes. "Michael told me you wouldn't actually do this. You wouldn't humiliate your own son." "Humiliation?" I asked softly. "Is that what you call consequences?" She leaned forward, her voice dropping into a hiss. "You'd better fix this, or I swear I'll make sure Michael never speaks to you again." I smiled, not with warmth, but with the cool certainty of a man who finally understood his power. "Then perhaps silence will be the best teacher." Her face drained of color. For once, Isabella's threats meant nothing. Because I held the deed, because the house was mine, and because their arrogance had finally met its match. Michael and Isabella are cornered. Foreclosure looms, and the father refuses to bend. But what comes next will shatter their fragile marriage and force them into choices they never imagined. The silence after my words seemed to stretch forever. Isabella stood rigid, her manicured fingers trembling as she clutched the foreclosure notice. Her eyes flicked around my modest apartment, taking in the worn furniture, the faded curtains, the old photograph of Michael as a boy on the mantel. "Pathetic," she muttered under her breath, as if my simple life disgusted her. Then she straightened, her voice rising with venom. "You think you're clever, don't you? Holding this over us like some kind of sick punishment. But Michael is my husband now. He doesn't need you. We'll find a way." I tilted my head, meeting her glare with calm. "You might want to look at the fine print first." Her brow furrowed. "What fine print?" I opened a folder on the table and slid the deed across the wood, tapping the owner's name, Jonathan Reyes.
"Oh, you see, Isabella, your name isn't on here. Neither is Michael's."
Which means that no matter what fantasies you've built inside those walls, the law recognizes only one owner. She froze. Her mask cracked, just for a moment, revealing the fear beneath her arrogance. When she spoke again, her tone was colder, more calculated. "So what's your plan, old man? Throw your own son onto the street? Ruin his reputation? Embarrass him in front of everyone?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure yet how far I was willing to go. Part of me still loved my son fiercely, still remembered his childhood laugh, the way he used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. But another part of me, the part they had trampled on, wanted justice, wanted them to feel the same sting of rejection I had felt that Christmas night. 2 weeks passed. Notices piled up. Michael stopped calling altogether, too ashamed or too afraid. But Isabella, she was relentless. She called, she texted, she even showed up at my work, her designer heels clacking against the concrete floor of the warehouse. "People are starting to talk," she hissed one evening. "Do you want your own son to be humiliated? Do you want him to lose his job, his friends, his status?" I studied her carefully. "Funny," I said, "how quickly love disappears when money's at stake." Her jaw clenched, and for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. But the real breaking point came not from her, but from Michael himself. One night, close to midnight, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, there he was, my son, once proud and defiant, now slumped against the doorframe like a broken man. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled. He didn't look like the polished, confident figure I'd seen weeks ago. He looked like the little boy I used to carry home after he scraped his knees. "Dad," his voice cracked. "She's threatening to leave me. She says I'm worthless without the house, that she should have married someone better." My chest tightened, a mixture of pity and anger swirling inside me. At last, Michael was beginning to see the truth, not just about the house, but about the woman he had chosen. And that realization was only the beginning of his undoing. Michael begins to break under Isabella's manipulation, finally seeing her cruelty, but his father must decide, will he save his son or let him fall? Michael collapsed into the chair across from me, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders shook, and for a moment, I wondered if he was crying. But when he looked up, it wasn't tears I saw, it was fear. "She said she only married me because of the house," he whispered. "That without it, I'm nothing, just another man with an average job, no future, no legacy." I studied him quietly. It was hard not to feel pity. My son, raised on values of hard work and respect, had let his pride blind him. Now that pride was being crushed under Isabella's heel. "Michael," I said gently, "a house doesn't make you a man. Your worth isn't in walls and furniture. But tell me, when you told me not to come for Christmas, was that your decision or hers?" He hesitated, his lips parted, then closed again. "Finally," he whispered, "it was hers. But I didn't fight her. I should have, but I didn't." The words cut deep, not because they were unexpected, but because they were honest. I leaned back, folding my arms. "Do you remember when you were 12? You begged me for that new baseball glove, the one we couldn't afford. I told you no, and you sulked for days. But then, you came into the garage one night and said, 'Dad, I don't need the glove. I just need you to come to my game.'" His eyes flickered with recognition, softening for a moment. "I was proud of you then, Michael. You understood something most people never learn, that love is worth more than possessions, and yet somewhere along the way you forgot that." His voice cracked. "I know. I let her convince me that appearances mattered more than family, that your sacrifices were embarrassing. I wanted to believe I had built this life myself." The silence hung heavy. I could see he was breaking, but the question was, breaking toward redemption or collapse. So I tested him. "The house is still mine," I said firmly. "I could take it back tomorrow, sell it, leave you with nothing. But if I even consider helping you, I need to know where your loyalty lies. Is it with Isabella or with your family?" His jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the floor, wrestling with the choice. And then, softly but clearly, he said, "With you, Dad. I've made mistakes, but I won't let her poison me anymore. If I have to lose the house, I'll lose it. I don't want to lose you too." The words caught me off guard. For the first time in years, I saw my son not as a man consumed by pride, but as the boy I once knew, flawed, humbled, reaching for forgiveness. But redemption never comes easy, because as those words left his mouth, the door burst open. Isabella stood there, her eyes blazing, her lips curled into a sneer. The storm had arrived. Michael finally chooses his father over Isabella, but she walks in at that exact moment, ready to unleash chaos that could destroy them both. Isabella quotes heels, clicked sharply against the floor as she strode into my apartment like it was her territory. Her eyes darted between me and Michael, her lips curling in contempt. "So this is what you've been reduced to," she hissed at Michael. "Running back to Daddy, begging for scraps like a child? You disgust me." Michael flinched. "Isabella, please." "No," she snapped, her voice shrill. "You promised me a life of status, of security. I didn't marry you to end up living in fear of foreclosure. I could have had better, Michael, and maybe I still can." The words hung in the air like poison. Michael's face crumbled as if she had struck him across the cheek. I rose slowly, planting my palms firmly on the table. "Enough," I said, my voice steady, carrying the weight of decades she could never understand. She turned on me, eyes blazing. "And you've been manipulating him from the start, haven't you? Keeping the deed in your name just to control us, to hold us hostage." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "No, Isabella. I kept the deed in my name to protect him from exactly this." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "Protect him? By humiliating him? By dangling this house over his head like a puppet on strings? By saving him from a woman who sees him as nothing more than a wallet?" Her mask slipped then, just for a moment. The sneer faltered, replaced by something raw, desperation. "You think he'll choose you over me?" she spat. "After everything we've built together?" I looked at Michael, giving him the chance to answer. His hands trembled, his voice low but firm. "Everything we've built, Isabella, none of it was ours. It was his, and I let you make me forget that. But I won't forget again." She stared at him in disbelief. "You're throwing me away? For him?" Michael swallowed hard. "I'm choosing my father. If that means losing you, then so be it." For the first time since I'd known her, Isabella was speechless. Her face flushed, her hands balled into fists at her sides. She looked around the room, as if searching for some weapon, some final blow. Then her eyes landed on the folder still open on the table, the deed, lying in plain view. In one swift motion, she lunged forward and snatched it up. "If this piece of paper is all that stands between me and the life I deserve, then maybe it's time it disappeared." But before she could rip it, I calmly reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out another document. A notarized copy, signed and sealed. "You didn't think I'd keep the only copy lying around, did you?" I said quietly. Her eyes widened in horror. For once, her confidence shattered. And that's when I knew the real power in this war wasn't money or property or appearances. It was truth. And the truth had finally cornered Isabella. Isabella realizes she has no leverage. The deed is secure. The truth is exposed. But will she surrender gracefully or unleash one last desperate strike? Isabella's hand trembled as she stared at the notarized copy in my grip. For the first time, her carefully constructed mask had crumbled, revealing the truth beneath fear. You can't do this," she sputtered, her voice rising in pitch. "You can't just erase everything we've worked for." Michael spoke then, his voice heavy but steady. "Worked for? Isabella, we didn't build this life. My father did. Every wall, every floorboard, every payment. It was him, and I let you convince me to treat him like a burden." Her eyes snapped toward him, wide and venomous. "So you're really siding with him, after everything I sacrificed?" "Sacrificed?" Michael echoed bitterly. "All you ever sacrificed was my dignity." The silence that followed was suffocating. Isabella's eyes darted between us, wild and calculating, and then, with a sudden shriek, she snatched a glass vase from the shelf and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, pieces raining down across the floor like shards of her breaking control. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "Both of you. If I can't have that house, no one will." Before either of us could stop her, she stormed out, her heels clattering violently against the stairs. The slam of the door echoed like thunder through the apartment. Michael collapsed back into the chair, burying his face in his hands. His voice was muffled but broken. "What have I done, Dad? I let her turn me against you. I let her use me." I placed a hand on his shoulder, firm but gentle. "What matters is that you see it now. That's more than most men ever manage." But deep inside, I knew Isabella wasn't finished. She wasn't the kind of woman to retreat quietly, and I was right. 2 nights later, a letter arrived. It was from Isabel's lawyer, a notice of intent to sue, claiming she had rights to marital property and that the house, though in my name, was part of their shared assets. Michael's hands shook as he read it. "She's really going to drag this into court, Dad. She'll destroy me." I took the letter, scanned it once, and then calmly slid it back into the envelope. "No, son. She'll destroy herself, because there's something she doesn't know." Michael looked up, his eyes filled with confusion and dread. "What do you mean?" I leaned back, a faint smile tugging at my lips. "I never paid off that mortgage alone." He blinked. "What?" "The final payments. They didn't come from my retirement fund. They came from an investment your mother and I made years ago, in your name. You've been the beneficiary all along, which means—" I slid another folder across the table, opening it to reveal the truth. "This house isn't just in my name, Michael. It's in yours, too." His mouth fell open. Shock, disbelief, and something else, hope, flickered across his face. But before he could respond, the phone rang. The caller ID lit up with a name we both dreaded. Isabella. The father reveals a stunning twist. Michael was co-owner of the house all along. But Isabella's calling, and whatever she has planned next could change everything. The phone buzzed angrily on the table, Isabella's name flashing across the screen like a warning light. Michael's hand hovered above it, trembling. "Don't answer," I said calmly. His eyes flicked to mine, desperate. "But what if? She's not calling to reconcile." I cut him off. "She's calling to manipulate, to twist your guilt one last time. Let her speak through her lawyer, not your heart." Michael hesitated, then slowly set the phone down. It buzzed again and again, but we let it ring into silence. The next morning, she showed up at the courthouse in a tailored black suit, her lawyer in tow, chin high as though she already owned the world. Michael and I walked in together, side by side. For the first time in years, he looked like my son again, not her puppet. The judge examined the documents, flipping through the deed, the mortgage records, the investment papers in Michael's name. Isabella sat stiffly, her jaw tightening with every page. Finally, the judge looked over his glasses. "Mrs. Reyes, according to these documents, the property in question was never transferred into your name, nor legally considered marital property. Furthermore, evidence shows the final payments were made from an account set aside by Mr. Reyes's late wife for their son's benefit. In short, you have no claim to this house." The words struck like thunder. Isabella's carefully painted smile cracked. "No claim?" she sputtered. "But I lived there. I made that house a home." The judge's gaze was cold. A home built on someone else's sacrifice does not make it yours. The gavel struck. Case dismissed. Isabella stood, her face contorted with fury. She turned on Michael, her voice shrill. "You let him humiliate me! You let him strip everything from me!" Michael's voice, though shaky, carried firm resolve. "No, Isabella, you did that yourself." Her eyes widened, not with anger, but with something far worse, realization. She had lost. She stormed out of the courtroom, her heels clicking a retreat, but for the first time, her exit carried no power, only defeat. Michael slumped into the bench beside me, his shoulders sagging. "Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness. After everything I said, everything I did." I gripped his hand, rough and weathered against his trembling one. "Son, forgiveness isn't about deserving, it's about family. And family is worth saving, even when it falters." Tears glistened in his eyes. He nodded, unable to speak. That evening, as we stood together outside the house, our house, the lights glowed warmly against the winter night. For the first time in a long while, I felt something stir in my chest. Not anger, not bitterness, but hope. Michael looked at me, voice hushed. "Will you come in, Dad, this time for Christmas?" I smiled softly. "Only if I can make the turkey." We both laughed, and for the first time in years, it felt real. Isabella vanished from our lives after that, leaving behind only echoes of her bitterness. Michael and I, though scarred by the past, began to rebuild. Not just our relationship, but the understanding that family cannot be bought nor destroyed by arrogance. The house still stands, not as a monument to money, but to love, forgiveness, and the quiet strength of a father's patience. And if there's one lesson in all this, it's simple. Never mistake sacrifice for weakness, and never mistake love for ownership. True family endures, even when pride tries to tear it apart. So if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let us know in the comments, what would you have done in my place? Because sometimes, justice isn't about revenge. It's about redemption.